Hello, friends, and welcome to the Handyman Success Podcast, where our mission is to teach and inspire using the stories and experiences of our guests, as well as discussions on various topics like pricing, marketing, and more. My name is Jason Call, owner of Handyman Marketing Pros, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alan Lee, owner of Honestly Handyman Services and the Handyman Journey Business Coaching. You can learn more about the services we provide to the handyman industry at handymansuccess.net. Whether you're sitting in the office, patching some drywall, or making your third run to the hardware store, we invite you to pull up a chair and join us on another episode of the Handyman Success Podcast. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Handyman Success Podcast. Today is a very special, very likely extended episode where I'm going to be interviewing my co-host, Alan Lee, the former owner of Honestly Handyman Services. And what we're going to be talking about today is a year by year from 2016, when Alan started his business part-time, till 2026 when he sold Honestly Handyman. And we're going to be going year by year through his experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. We've got, revenue numbers, marketing budgets, like the number of employees. So we really want to use this episode to inform you guys of kind of the blood, sweat, and tears of Alan's handyman journey. It's just going to shed a lot of light on what it takes to start and run a handyman business with no sugarcoating. It's just the raw realities, and there's so many great things within this story too. So I'm super excited to go through the years with Alan, a trip down memory lane, man. And also, one other preface for the episode, guys, is that on our next episode, I'm going to be interviewing Alan again, and we're going to talk specifically about his experience selling Honestly Handyman Services. Like, what went into that? What was that like all the details as far as like his experience in selling the business. And so we thought that sharing the whole story before we get to that point is going to really load up, like the emotion, the experience. Like, it's not just as simple as, oh, sold the business. Like, this is 10 years of love and commitment and pain and goodness. And so we really wanted to highlight all that stuff to fully drive home the experience that Alan's had as he now moves on to full-time coaching, consulting, spending time with his family, all that good stuff. So I swear to you that Alan is with me. And the last thing I'm going to say here is that Alan did kind of recap his top 10 lessons that he learned and made an ebook. You can find that at handymanjourney.com right there on the homepage. So if you want kind of just his top 10 takeaways and lessons learned from starting and growing and selling his handyman business, check out handymanjourney.com to kind of get those dissected thoughts in the ebook. Alan, my friend and co-host, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being here.
What's up, buddy? Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to just dive into it when we kind of went over this task of like breaking it down year by year. This is a lot of stuff, and it really brought up a lot of feelings, emotions, thoughts that I hadn't thought about in forever. But really excited to dig into just the complete 10 years of Honestly Handyman and explain what that looked like.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you going through our rigorous interview process to get on the show. You're a great candidate. Okay, let's
Thanks.
just jump into it. So, Alan, you started your business in 2016, part-time. You were an auto mechanic at Kinsley's.
Kinesel's
Kniesel,
Auto.
shout out to
Yep.
Kniesel's Auto. I drove by there many a time. So take us back, man. So this is the year that's part-time. There's not many numbers surrounding it because you just jumped into it. So take us back to 2016. How did you start Honestly Handyman Services?
Yeah, totally. And a funny story, I remember you were telling me one time I was just raw dogging it and I turned into Kinesel's and you were apparently right there and you like let me turn in front of you and you were like waving at me and I didn't even see you at all. So
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring up that story, but yes, you
yeah,
gave no positive acknowledgement and thank you for letting
no,
me
I'm just
letting
like,
you
I'm just
get through
like,
the traffic.
and that might be a good thing of like where I was in life. Like I was just like, I'm just driving
Mm,
in to go to work and just getting this stuff done. Like there was no passion. There wasn't, a whole lot of, hey, what's next, what the future looks like. So that kind of like places that's kind of where I was in
Mm,
2016. I was an automotive mechanic. I did that for about 10 years before I started up this business. And I was just kind of feeling stuck in traditional employment. Uh, you know, Years later, I would coin myself as someone who's virtually unemployable. Like I just didn't do very well working for someone, and I found out that I did a whole heck of a lot better working for myself. And basically how this whole thing started is my wife was involved in an at-home business, and we were invited to go to a business seminar, like a coaching seminar, with some of those people. So we ended up buying tickets to this event. Well, actually, the first event that we were supposed to go to, I couldn't get the time off work, and consequently, my wife also couldn't get the time off work for that event. Well, the next one came up a few months later. I got the time off. My wife ended up quitting her job because I think we're cut from the same cloth, where it's like we want to get the time off when we can get the time off. But anyway, so we bought tickets for this event. We couldn't afford it, so we put it on a credit card. Probably wasn't the smartest idea. So I was thinking of ways to make extra income so I could pay this credit card off. And so thinking about all this, I'm like, yeah, I've done handyman stuff for friends and family and neighbors growing up. My mom was always super interested. That's a whole other story of how I first kind of experienced the handyman kind of way of thinking was through my mom. Um, but so I created this really horrible flyer. Like I think it said like, do you need a handyman, plumbing, electrical, blah blah blah, and it was just like really horrible. I posted on Facebook, and one of my old bosses, his daughter reached out to me. She's like, "Can you remodel my kitchen?" And I'm like, sure. Like I've never remodeled a kitchen in my life, but I'm like, sure. Like I know all the pieces that go into it. And she ended up hiring me in the nights. Like literally, I'd have my day job. I'd change into my uniform for Honestly Handyman. I'd go out there and I'd work for her 4 hours at night. $50 an hour. I've said it before. Like I just pulled a number out of thin air. I was making like 20 something an hour at the auto shop. So I'm like, $50 an hour sounds great. I'd love a little price increase. So charge $50 an hour is making $200 a night. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Like on paper, I'm making more than I was at my day job, and just fell. And we ended up going to the business seminar, and I got kind of the knowledge that I needed of really kind of the mindset shift that I could start up this business full time from that business seminar. I didn't know that that's what that business seminar was about, but it was all about the mindset of being an entrepreneur. And so that's really what I came out of that from. I had no clue that this would become what it is today, a 10-year journey that's even still going. But that little Facebook flyer really just changed everything and kind of launched me into starting the thing up part-time. I did it part-time for a couple months. We decided we wanted to go full-time January 1st, 2017. So me and my wife sat down and we made a plan where I would work every night and every weekend for the month of December 2016, and just in an effort of trying to get the most clients that I could. Because my idea was like day one, I would just go door to door. And then I was telling my financial advisor that, and he's like, that's a horrible idea. Like, Alan, don't do that. Like, you need to have, actual people on your schedule before you go full time. So
mm,
I made that kind of my mission. At that time, I started paying $300 to Yelp every single month, which that was kind of scary because coming from a W-2 mindset of having a job and actually paying $300 a month and not knowing if that was going to like come back to me was really scary. But that's really how I got most of my first clients. And then I got my first week booked out for 2017. And so that kind of sums up 2016 and kind of how I
yeah.
started up part time.
Yeah, I love that story, man. And it's a good encouragement for people out there. Like, if you got a heart to help people and learn and grow, you took a job that was probably beyond your scope and experience, but it sounded like there was a conversation there where she knew, like, you're going to be figuring things out and you're a willing helping hand that was handy. And of course, zoom out or fast forward and, you've got this really professional, well-run handyman business. So it's an encouragement out there that you don't have to be perfect when you start. So I
Mm-hmm.
commend you for kind of just getting yourself out there. Probably wise too to line up some jobs. I know one of our common questions we ask people that went from part-time to full-time is, what was the parameters there? And so for you guys, it was having jobs on the calendar at the start of 2017 so you can confidently leave Kinesils. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. And that wasn't my initial thought. Like, if you guys know me, that's not really how I roll. I'm kind of like
Yeah.
ready, shoot, aim. So I was
Mhm.
literally just going to quit my job and go door to door and knock on people's doors until someone hired me. And then luckily, my financial advisor talked a little sense into me. And so that's why we made a goal of, let's have 1 week like solid booked out. But
Mhm.
but we had that week, we set a date. Like, we set a date that, hey, we're going to go full time January 1st, probably in November, because we talked about it, and then we made the decision to, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to go like, crazy, and we got to work every night, every weekend in December to build those clients up and
Mhm.
build up reviews and et cetera, things like that. So there was some thought into it, but luckily there was other people smarter than me that spoke into my life.
Yeah, that's great, man. I love too I don't know the word for it, but the humor and just the outcome of you put a business seminar on the credit card and then have to figure out how to pay off the credit card so you start a business.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
funny how that works. And another encouragement is that if you've got the heart to serve and help and put yourself out there and be uncomfortable, do hard work, like you can absolutely do this. And so your original story is just a testament to that. And I also remember you working those nights because we've been friends for a long time and we're at the young adults Bible study
Yeah.
group together, and I remember seeing photos of you like with your headlamp on because it was the winter time and there was not
Right.
much sunlight after 5 o'clock. You'd have your headlamp
Yeah.
on, like weed whacking or something, like on the grind. So it's a lot of work to start a business, especially when you're keeping up a full-time job, but a worthwhile
Hmm.
endeavor to create that side income and build up that comfort, that prudent nest egg and comfort to go full time. Um,
Hmm.
okay, so that transitioned us to 2017. This is the first full year in business. You left the auto shop. Was your last day at the end of December? Like, did you put in a 2 week notice? Like, what did that look like at the start of the year, jumping into 2017? And before you go, actually, I want to ground and root this year into real numbers here for our listeners. So, Alan's first full year in business in 2017, his revenue was about 75,000. He was a
Hmm.
solo owner operator. Did not start hiring or W-9 or anything like that. He was still maintaining the Yelp for $300 a month. Um, and I also want to note tactically here that Yelp, everyone asks about that in the Facebook groups. It can work in some markets, not so well in other markets. You don't know until you try. We advise any paid advertising to at least stick with it for 6 months to understand the true ROI. So just to quelch anyone that's like, I tried Yelp and it was a ripoff. Well, in Sacramento, California, it was actually quite a great advertising platform. So you held that budget throughout 2017. So all that say, what was it like? Did you put in your 2 week notice, start in 2017? Like walk us through like entering that first full year in business where you were self-employed.
Yeah, definitely. And this is kind of a learning experience of mine, which I can't apply it really, but apparently, so I left like December 28th or whatever of 2016 from the auto shop. And apparently in their bylaws, in order to get the 401k match, you have to be there for the whole year. And so since I left a few days before the end of the year, I didn't get my 401k match for that year. So that is what it is. So yeah, so I left the auto shop, a few days there. I gave a 2 week notice, and then started up full time January 1st, 2017. And that was a little crazy because everyone knows and has probably heard about the California handyman laws, right? And so for me, I'm like, I don't want to get in prison, I don't want to get fined, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
So at that time, and again, to preface, this is back in 2017. So Yelp was a little bit different back then. Times were a little bit different. The AI wasn't really around. So I didn't want to get in trouble by the CSLB. So I am like, okay, the law was $500 labor and materials. So I'm like, I don't really know what that means, but I'm gonna just charge all my clients $500 a day. Like, that's just what I'm gonna do. And so that first week, I was completely booked out, $500 a day, every single day, and it was really crazy. I remember my very first job, January 1st, 2017. it was New Year's Day, and there was this lady right around the corner from my house that she needed some. She had some 4 inch what they are basically. They were halogen can lights, and I had no clue what that was. I was going to my plan and how I estimated it. I was going to pop those down. I was going to put the LED can lights in. Bing, bada, boom, no big deal. Well, I pull them down, and I'm like, these wires look weird. So I get out my DMM and I measure digital multimeter for people who don't have automotive technology or terminology, and I test it, and there's 12 volts coming out of it, and I'm like, what the heck? This isn't 120 volts. So I'm like, okay. So then I get the can out. I try and get the can out of the ceiling, and the wires that connect to the cans were not long enough to get the can out of the ceiling because whoever installed them didn't make it long enough. So I'm like, I got to go up in your attic. I went up in her attic. The attic was like this big. I was like on my side, and I was like pulling these out, and I saw this weird box in there. And I'm like, what the heck is it? So I'm up in her attic above her kitchen watching a YouTube video of like, what is this box in this can light? And come to find out, you probably know it was the ballast, right? And basically what I ended up having to do, I had to neuter the ballast, bring 120 volts down so that I could plug in my LED can light. It's a very simple job, but that was my very first job full time. I had never seen that before. I was like mind blown. Got that job done. Made $500. I was like, I'm rich. $500. My first $500 day. The next day, January 2nd, it was pouring, just pouring rain, and I had sold a job to replace these sprinkler heads in this guy's front and backyard that he had gotten marked by the city because they were leaking. And so I'm like, oh, no big deal. Just sprinkler heads, right? Well, I go out there and I'm just like digging around. I can't get this dang sprinkler head out. And as I dig, I find out they're huge. It's the canister type sprinkler heads, which I had never encountered before. And this one had the PVC pipe coming in from the side. So the only way to get those off would be to cut the PVC pipe or dig a big old hole and unscrew it. And so I unscrewed those back and forth to the store trying to find this canister thing. And it was pouring rain. I worked so late that night, pouring rain all day, but I got it fixed and I made $500. And I was like, yes. So that's a little snapshot of my very first week. Like the jobs went absolutely horrible, but I made $500 and I was doing my own thing. And I remember one day, I don't remember when it was, maybe that week or the week later, I was driving to Home Depot at 10 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, I had this weird feeling of like, this is crazy. Like I'm driving to Home Depot at 10 a.m. where normally I'd be at the auto shop working on cars, whatever. Like it was just such a surreal moment. And then I started understanding like, wow, there's a lot of freedom here. I could come home and have lunch with my wife, or like, it's just absolutely crazy. And just like, it gave me this really good thought of like, wow, this is crazy. And this is like more what the entrepreneur life gives you, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, it was just really interesting. So I thought that's kind of a sum up of my very, very first week.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, man. And so, I know a summary for most people's like first full year too is like it's a learning experience. And I think even making $500 a day is quite a decent wage for all the learning and the uncertainty. And I certainly can resonate with those moments of when you realize I'm driving to Home Depot, like this is amazing. I finished my job early. I can just go home or
Yeah.
work on the business. And there's just so much, there's some light bulb moments, and it's good to even as you grow your business, even if you're seasoned veteran, it's good to hold on to those and not forget that before this day, sometime in the past, you dreamed of being there, even if it might be
Hmm.
hard. And I think that's an important mindset thing. So the first year sounds like a good summary, man, would be just figuring out the actual labor, like what inputs need to be done for the output of revenue.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's pretty interesting as I was going through this, I actually found because I started up a YouTube channel somewhere in the middle of 2017, and that's kind of how we got here today. And I was looking back on YouTube, and I remember that very first year at the end of 2017, me and my wife sat down in front of our Christmas tree, and we talked about like a recap of our first year. It
I
was
remember
really
that
cool, and
video.
that video is still on YouTube. You guys can go watch it right now. Um, I wish we would have done one every single year because that would have been
Mm,
super cool. But we
yeah.
only did it that first year. And watching it, we were talking about like what we learned that first year. And I think some of the things that I wrote down here was that self-employment's not a 9 to 5 job. Like it's you might work for 2 hours in the morning, then come home for an early lunch. You might do some paperwork, then you got to go to a job, at 5 p.m. or like I don't know. It's all different, right?
Mm,
So it's completely different than a W-2 position. And then I think another thing that we had said that we learned in there was it's okay to choose your customers. Like, not everyone is your customer. There's some people that you don't want to work for, and that's completely okay. There's some people that only want to pay you $20 an hour, and you don't have to say yes. Like, it's your own business. You can say no. So that was a really big thing. And then following up matters, and that's something that I've always sucked at. As we get later in this, I've since hired employees to do the follow up process for me because that's not my forte, and I suck at that. And then another thing I suck at is cash management, but that's very important and needed as a handyman. Is most people don't even know how much money they're spending, how much money they're making, and that's one huge thing that I now coach people on. Is hey, how do you actually know what money's coming in, what money's
mm,
going out, things like that. Um, and then also the last lesson I wrote here is the business can consume your whole life if you let it. So you have to set up some boundaries, or else people will just be like, in that video we were talking about. I think it was so Christmas of 2016 when I was still part time. Someone was calling me and texting me, and then they left me a review on Christmas Day because I wouldn't answer the phone. They left me a bad review.
mm,
They're like, this
yeah.
guy's not answering his phone. I'm like, it's Christmas Day, leave me alone. So you got to set up boundaries, or this will
Yeah.
consume your whole life. Um, and at the end of the day, kind of sum up the 2016 or 2017, I kind of wrote here like the business was growing and I was learning and had more revenue. I mean, we made $75,000 that year, but I realized quickly that I was becoming the bottleneck. Everything kind of like ended with me. Follow up,
Mhm.
cash management, everything. And I think that was one big thing that kind of highlighted in 2018, which we'll get into here in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. And another kind of fun realization too is this is pre like Handyman Journey Facebook group started in 2017.
Yeah.
Your YouTube channel started in 17. I remember when you first like sent me your YouTube channel link, and I was working. I think I was still working at the bank. I left my job in the middle of 2017 and started my marketing business. And I remember you sending me that YouTube link, and I remember thinking, man, this is some real trash quality videos, but I love that
Yeah,
guy,
totally.
man. Like what a like the hustle and the heart, to put yourself out there. I just looked up to that. So I commend you personally on that, man. Is that like it doesn't have to be perfect when you start. Like you can just make it better. But I do remember
Yeah.
those original YouTube
Yeah.
videos in your truck and the Chick-fil-A parking lot.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were rough, but you put yourself out there and then you set up the Handyman Journey Facebook group. Surely by now everyone that listens to part of this, the Facebook group, but there was not a safe, good cultured place on the internet to like connect with other handymen and ask about jobs or pricing
Mhm.
and questions or how would you deal with this customer who's blowing me up on Christmas Day and leaving me bad reviews. So the community that's been created since is such a resource that we all have now, and that's amazing. That's
Mhm.
super cool. Not something to take for granted. That was not there when you were starting. Okay, so that was the end of 2017. 2018, the big cap here is that Alan Lee didn't have a business. He made a job for himself, but it was still obviously big progress from, the real W-2 job. So,
Mhm.
amazing stuff. So 2018 though, total revenue is about 90,000. Still spending about $300 a month on your advertising for Yelp. Um, 2018, also January or on Christmas of 2017. I think that's whenever I launched your website as a Christmas gift.
Yeah, I think so too.
That was
You're
the
right. Yeah,
previous
yeah,
year. Because I remember texting you saying Merry Christmas, bro. And I sent you the
yeah. It
honestlyhandyman.com.
might have been, I think it was 2016.
Yeah, I
I
think
think it was
so.
when I
Yeah, it was
first
your
time.
first
Yeah.
year 'cause I was still working my job and learning about website design. Um, so obviously, Alan's marketing numbers, we had a nice arrangement there as good friends.
Yeah,
But
that was the best Christmas present ever. And I want to plug everyone listening here. Like, if you don't use Handyman Marketing Pros, Jason and Kobe, like, if you don't use them for your marketing, for your web design, like, you're crazy because it's really not that expensive. And like most of the impact and the change and the growth that I've had in my business is due to their website development. Like just them getting leads, them optimizing SEO, just absolutely fantastic. So want to plug a short plug for you, Jason and Handyman Marketing Pros. You guys, if you're listening out there, you need to check them out.
appreciate that, man. Yeah, awesome job too on the Google business profile. Can't not state everyone's got to verify that thing, build reviews,
Yeah.
all these important things all work together. So I'm certainly grateful for that relationship that we had over the years as well, getting that honestly just dominating the Roseville, Sacramento area on Google. Um, So 2018 though, this is interesting. So again, recap here, 2018, moving to second full year, revenue about 90,000 total, about $300 a month on Yelp. He was booked out about 2 months. So just incredibly booked. And I remember you're still spending money on Yelp, and you
Yeah.
asked me, should I keep spending? I'm like, dude, you're 2 months out. Like, what? Most people are not going to be saying yes. I'll wait 2 months unless they've already worked with you. So anyway,
Mhm.
and then the peak, so this is when you started hiring, your first year of figuring out what that looked like. And at one time, you peaked at 6 1099 techs. I know there's a lot of things that happened in 2018, man, but I would be remiss to be like, what on earth, Alan? Peak at 6 1099 techs. What the heck happened? Like, let's flesh that out first. As far as hiring, and you needed help. You at least recognize that. How did you land with 6 1099s? What does that look like?
Yeah, yeah, just crazy. So a lot of it was, so I guess to do a little bit of backstory, like how I realized I needed it. Like my first daughter was born in May of 2018, and she was
Mm.
born with a lot of medical issues. And we ended up being in the hospital for about a month in the NICU and all that. And when I was in the hospital, like I didn't know how long we were going to be in there. So after we went to the hospital, I called my clients because I was booked out for quite a while at the time,
And
and
you were
I
in
called them
St.
up.
Louis, Missouri,
Well,
right?
that's next year. That's
Oh,
or that's
okay. Sorry, I skipped.
2021.
Okay.
Yeah, or 2019. So you're giving people a little bit of a sneak peek
Okay.
here. But no, this time, we were in Sacramento at the hospital. Um, and I was calling people up and I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. We're in the hospital. I need to push you back. And everyone was super fine. Everyone was fine.
Mhm.
But I ended up pushing
Great.
people back, not doing any work for about a month. And I didn't make any income for a month. And that's kind of
Mhm.
when I realized that, hey, I'm the business. And if I'm out of commission and not actually doing the jobs, I'm not making any money. So I kind of had this idea that I should start like bringing people on. So I started bringing on 1099 people. At the time, I called them 1099 employees, but just to give you a little sneak peek, I quickly realized that what I was doing with 1099s was illegal, and that's why I stopped it and moved to W-2s. But yeah, I had 1099 contractors, independent contractors. There was one guy that I used to work with. He was the first one that came on board, and then I put it out there on the Handyman Journey Mastermind group. That's how I found him, and I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, is any of you guys around Sacramento, are you interested in like getting more work? Because you guys already have your businesses. I could just supply you with work. I'm booked out for like 2 months. You guys could come do all this. And so, yeah, one time I had 6 1099s on board, and that was crazy, just crazy. I thought it would be a huge help, but it was really just a lot to manage because I was still trying to do the work, and I was managing six of these people running around, not doing things correctly. And
Mhm.
that was the biggest thing with 1099s is you don't actually, and it's kind of the wrong verbiage. You don't own an employee, but as a 1099, you definitely don't own that employee. You don't have any control over that person. It's a 1099 independent contractor that has their own business, and They come in, they do a job for you, you pay them their cut from that job, and then they're released from that job. So they have no reason to commit to that job and stick with that job. Um, and so the really hard thing is uh, when you bring on 1099 independent contractors and they screw something up, they mess something up, um, there's they're not held to that. So you have to go out and fix that job, as like it
Mhm.
was honestly Handyman's business name that was held to
Mhm.
that job, not the 1099 guy. So
Your
it
business was
was,
getting the bad reviews or the
yeah, my
reputation.
business was getting the bad
Mhm.
reviews for
Mhm.
those 1099s not doing the work that they were supposed to be doing. And so it was just super hard. They weren't charging for materials, even though I was allowing them to buy materials with my card and things like that. So it turned into a big nightmare, and it really didn't increase the revenue very much either.
Yeah, and I want to also give you credit, man, in that the high emotional state of your daughter being in the hospital, your newborn. And that's something that I think most people can't really experience to the degree that you do. And it's not the first year that we're going to be talking about this, but the incredible emotional duress of taking care of your family first, but also realizing, hey, I've got bills to pay to take care of my family that I'm with, right? So I want
Hmm.
to, just give you credit where credit's due, man, and that's a really hard situation that most people don't have to deal with to the degree that you did. And so I commend you for getting to action, man, and just trying to figure something out. Because from those lessons, I know you learned a lot that will influence the coming years and having a good team and the expectations and training and all the good stuff. So anyway,
Hmm.
we can't just gloss over the fact that Alan, you were in the hospital with your daughter every single day and the taxing of that and also trying to manage a business and all these phone calls coming in. So you obviously got through it, and that's amazing. That would have destroyed most businesses and people.
Yeah, thanks, man. And it was a trying time. And, if I had my full-time W-2 job at that time, like I don't know what would have happened. I don't think you can take a month off work and, things like that. So it was really a blessing that, we had my own business and I was able to push people back and then just pick up right where I left off.
Mm.
Um, so it's just kind of interesting how things work out. But yeah, that's kind of only the beginning of kind of the medical issues and kind of how that laid into the growth of the business. Like really
Yeah.
the business grew out of necessity more than anything.
So, okay, so you're out of the hospital, it's about a month long. Like, what was your takeaway from that? Like, forget the 1099s, I'm just going back to Alan Lee. Did you, still keep one or two people on to help with some of the labor? Because I'm sure there's follow-ups and stuff with the hospital that still was a little bit more on the schedule than
Mhm.
your previous year. So take us to, getting out of that kind of more intense, like I'm at the hospital every single day situation.
Yeah, so I mean, we kept the 1099s on for probably a little while into when we hired our first W-2. Uh, so it was really like during all that point of just like chaos, I was out working as much as I could, but also, yeah, going to the hospital here and there,
Mm.
doing follow-ups, things like that. Um, and I was booked out for like 2 months, right? Even with my 1099 guys, like it was insane. Um, and so what happened is I wasn't answering the phone. Like I already said, I suck at follow up, and I was so booked out. Like I just wasn't answering the phone. I was so busy doing the actual work that I could not actually address the front end admin side of the business. And
Mm.
what would happen is like people would call the business and I'd be like, oh man, I would love to answer this call, but I can't. I'm busy. So I'd let it go to voicemail. And then at the end of the day, I would tell myself, okay, at the end of the day, I'm gonna listen to all these voicemails and I'm gonna call them all back. Or at least text them, right? I'm gonna do that. But then the end of the day would come and be like, I'm tired. I don't want to do that. And then a week would go by and I would those would be in the back of my head. It's like, oh, I still have all those people I need to call from Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday that left a voicemail. And then I'd be like, I can't call them back now. That's embarrassing. Like, what are they going to think of me? Like, they're going to think I'm some handyman that doesn't have his business in order, which that's exactly what I was. I didn't have my business in order, but I didn't want to face that,
Yeah.
right? So I just didn't call them back. It's horrible to say. I did not call them back. as a handyman business coach, that's like the worst thing. I should have kicked myself. So what
So to
yeah,
stop, one quick side note here.
yeah.
You would encourage, and I certainly would, even if you got a voicemail from last week, you call them back. Like
Oh yeah.
that's the
100%.
respectful thing to do, and you just tell them, you just apologize and said, I'd still love to be able to, get your request if it's not too late. So just want to make sure our listeners understand, like, don't do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Honor your word. Like,
Mm,
even if it's been a month and like, let's just say a lead came in and you didn't see it, and then all of a sudden now you saw it, but it came in a month ago, man, call that person and be like, hey, Betty, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Like, all the stars aligned and I just missed your call. I didn't see it for a whole month. I wanted to apologize. And just like, because being a like a person of courtesy, like goes a heck of a long way. So
absolutely.
very important. And how all this culminated is one day I was on Facebook on my lunch and I was scrolling and someone had posted in a Facebook group, said, hey, does anyone know of a good handyman? And someone, one of my clients, commented on it and said, yeah, call Honestly Handyman. He's great. And I'm like, that's awesome. I referred on Facebook. But then I went a layer further and someone had commented on that one and they said, no, don't call Honestly Handyman. He doesn't call you back. And that's like when the dagger stabbed me in the heart. And I'm
Mm,
like, and I looked at that and all I could do was like own it because I'm like, they're totally right. I do not
yeah.
call people back. And I've left that person, I've probably left them hanging. And I've probably left tons of other people hanging. Just didn't call them back. So that's really when I realized that like communication is everything. And I was avoiding communication, and
Mm,
that just like compounded the stress. And I needed to do something about that. So it was so at that point, I kind of started working on what it would look like to actually bring someone on, like an
mhm.
actual W-2 employee, to tackle this thing that was the main issue. I felt like the main issue was getting people in, answering phone calls, answering emails, answering Yelp, etc. Just because I had the labor stuff figured out, I could do that. I was rocking and rolling with that. We had other 1099 guys that were helping us with that. Shortly after this, we kind of disbanded all that. But I started thinking about that, and I started reading the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And if anyone out there is interested in hiring, that's the first step. Read The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. I actually didn't read it. I listened to it, because I'm not much of a reader, just like most handyman. I was
Yeah.
labeled ADHD. I was, labeled whatever you want to say, dyslexic, all that stuff. So listening is oftentimes better than reading. That's why people are listening to this podcast, right? They're probably listening while they're painting a wall or, fixing, a faucet, whatever it is, because that's how handymen are wired. So get the book, The E-Myth Revisited, and start reading it. Um, and that's really like kinds of brings us into 2019 and building systems, processes, and kind of culminating into growth.
Yeah. Thanks for kind of the recap on the 2018 and kind of the big realization that, you were the business, but also the bottleneck and had to answer the phone, didn't want to call people back. So the encouragement there is, I love your honesty of like of seeing that Facebook comment of like, don't call honestly, like, he won't call you back. And literally reacting of like, that hurts because it's true. And what am I going to do about that? And I remember you reading E-Myth Revisited because I remember you being super excited about it. And I'm not sure if you first told me about it, but definitely a plug for that book for anyone that even if you don't want to hire, it's good to understand the systems of business. And as far as like not answering the phone, just a quick shout out, a self promotion, if you will. Our client's biggest pain point is just like Alan here, not being able to answer the phone back in
Mm-hmm.
2018. So super excited in July, we're launching an AI phone receptionist service that hooks into the
Nice.
website, Google. It's just from our kind of research and working with clients over the years, the biggest pain point is once they get that traction, the leads aren't really the problem. Once you start building reviews, you get on Google, nice website, you're doing the Facebook community groups, you got the yard signs, you're big on the yard signs. So not answering the phone is holding your business back more than you know. Lots of great clients, repeat clients. There can be some bad reputation that gets built. So I'm super excited to be able to kind of offer that for people that work with us. So just a
Love
quick
it.
shout out on that should be able to help a lot of people.
That's going to be a game changer. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, save a lot of time and focus on the things that matter and not answering the phone. I mean, who wouldn't want to not answer the phone? I mean, that sounds wonderful, right? Just do the work that you're supposed to be doing. So let's transition to 2019 here. Um, so this is the first year you did six figure in revenue, about
Yeah.
150,000. So you nearly doubled the business from 2018. Yes, go Alan. 7 year ago, Alan did good work, man. I don't know about today. Just kidding. So revenue is about 150,000 in 2019. Your marketing increased to about 800 a month, still spending Yelp 300 and then Google pay per click. So we started running Google ads
hmm
because you started hiring. So he also built out his team in 2019 with April, the initial CSR, and actually still with Honestly Handyman today, answering the phones. And then your first W-2 tech, Frank, and then Alan as the owner and still working as a tech as well. So I really loved your setup there of like you solved the main pain point, answering the phone. Well, now you have someone do that and there's more work on the table. So you had a
Yeah.
technician and then yourself. It's not simple, but yet it is, right?
Yeah.
Just solving that problem. So take us through 2019, man. Systems changed everything. You read the E-Myth, you started to understand the vision of the business and the pain points of answering the phone. So walk us through entering 2019 and kind of the big changes that you implemented to nearly double the business that year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I knew what the biggest problem was. And that's really like what my thought was is like, look at what you suck at and hire for that position. Right.
Hmm.
So I was good at the technician part of it. I was good at the sales, but I sucked at answering the phone. Like that was it. And so we put together kind of what a job description would look like, what compensation would look like, you know, all of that stuff, systems, processes, scripts. We created scripts of like, how someone would actually talk to a client. And when I look back at this now, I'm like, how did I find the time to do that? Because AI wasn't around, right? Nowadays, you just go into AI and be like, hey, create a script of how a CSR should talk to a client. And bam, but I typed it all out on Google Docs. Like, I don't know how I came up with all that because I have ADHD, right? Or that's what I'm labeled as. And I don't know how I focused that much to do that. But I
You
think the
had
problem
to.
was so big that I had to do it. I had
Yeah.
to figure it out. So we created this thing. And then I'm like, okay, so now we know what we want to hire. How am I going to find the person to hire? So I literally just put it out to friends and family. And the children's ministry director at our church, she's like, hey, my mom, uh, you know, my dad's just retiring. My mom's been a stay-at-home mom her whole life. She kind of wants to get a part-time job so she can bring in a little extra income, but she wants to stay home to take care of my dad. And I'm like, maybe this will work. They lived an hour away from us, right? And so we reached out to them and found out that we had a crazy connection. Basically, her dad and my dad worked together back like 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Absolutely insane how all that came about. And, so pretty crazy. But, anyways, just a really good fit. And I remember when I met with her, her name is April, and she started April 1st, 2019. So April started on April 1st. It's not an April
Hmm.
Fool's Day joke, but it was pretty amazing. When I first hired her, I gave her our laptop, which was a Google Chromebook, and the phone number, which was a Google Voice phone number. And I said to her, and I even asked her just recently, I'm like, do you remember me saying this to you? She's like, oh, yeah, I do. When I gave all that to her, I said, it's your problem now. And looking back now, I should not have said that to an employee, but that's how I felt. I felt like it was such a big problem. And I said, it's your problem now. And
Mm.
God bless her, April. She's still with Honestly Handyman. She's been with us for what, 6, 7 years now,
Yeah, 7 years.
something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but just amazing. She's taken it and ran with it, added so much to the role. She really is a customer service representative at heart, and just
Mm.
God bless her. She didn't know anything about the construction industry. but she was really good talking with people, and that's all we needed. So the scripts that I created were very much of like, hey, these are the jobs we do. These are the jobs we don't do. These are the service areas we operate in. These are the service areas we don't operate in, so that she can quickly rule people out. Now she knows a whole heck of a lot more than she did 7 years
Yeah.
ago because she's been with us. But those scripts and processes were like gold for her back then because she didn't know, hey, do we install kitchen faucets? Like, I don't know, but it's written on the thing. Like, yes, we do that. And so we hired her April 1st, 2019, and man, that was the best hire. And I want to say for people listening, because I know what you guys are probably thinking, like, why should I hire a CSR first? Because that's not a money making proposition. Like, they don't bring in any money. And you're totally right. A CSR does not bring in any money. But believe me, if you hire someone to do something that is a problem for you, it's going to free up a part of your mind that you didn't even know existed for you to focus on other aspects of the business and start making more money. For me, if I was doing, maybe if I was even spending 5 hours a week on the admin side, the stuff CSR could do, that's saving me 5 hours to do other stuff. Maybe that's marketing, maybe that's more work, whatever, which is consequently going to bring you more money. But it's not all about, hey, what jump can I do right now to make more money? That's not what it's all about. It's really about the big picture. And it takes back to the E-Myth where Michael Gerber says there's 3 reasons to start a business, which this was kind of mind-blowing for me. He said you either start it up to sell it, you start it up to franchise it, or you start it up to grow it and let it run without you. And that was like mind-blowing because I started up my business to make more money and have more freedom. That was it. Like, I didn't have an end goal in mind. And so that's why I didn't picture it being this 10-year thing. I didn't picture us
Mm.
selling it one day. I didn't know what I envisioned. I had a bunch of people ask me like, what do you want to do with the business eventually? And I was always like, I don't know. We're going to see where God takes us. Um, so it's not, but if I look back now, it's not about what move can I make to make more money. It's what move can I make to create a business that is sustainable and reaches the goals that I want to reach. That's really what it's all about, is how can you do so. Hiring a CSR for us was absolutely fantastic. And I think one lesson, probably the key lesson that I learned in 2019 is delegation is the key to seamless operation. Like that's the key to making things happen. And then shortly after that, I think it was 1 month later, maybe April, June, we moved one of our 1099 guys into a W-2 position, and we got rid of all of our other 1099 guys. And so we had one technician, which was Frank. He was our 1099, moved into W-2, and then April as our CSR. And that was really fantastic just to kind of keep going in 2019 because we had to go to St. Louis, Missouri, and we lived there for a month and a half while my daughter had a pretty big
Mm.
surgery on her feet. She was born with club feet, and so she had to go there for surgery and a bunch of various casting for
Yeah.
that. She was also had distal arthrogryposis. So we were there for a month and a half, which was crazy. But contrasting this with when my daughter was first born, we now had employees, W-2 employees. So we had someone to answer the phones and we had someone to sell the jobs and do the jobs, which was Frank.
Mhm.
So the business was, in a sense, running without me, even though I was very much still like estimating jobs. I was calling them daily. I was still on it, right? We had a phone meeting every Wednesday or something like that to go over pay, and it was really interesting how we ran the whole thing. But it was interesting to contrast that and be like, okay, before in 2018 when my daughter was born, I had no employees and I made no money while I was in the hospital. Well, now we're living in St. Louis, a completely different, a different state, and the business is still going without me, still bringing in money. And then it was
Mhm.
such a blessing too, because like you said, I had created the Handyman Journey Mastermind group on Facebook in 2017. So I had gotten to know handyman from all around. And so I got to know 3 or 4 different handymen in St. Louis. So while I was there, guys were like, "Hey, Alan, come work with me," and they would pay me to work with them. So these handymen that I knew from Facebook and followed me on YouTube, they paid me to work for them. And then also the people who own the Airbnb, crazy story. It's a story of, I think, God's goodness.
This is the
So
Airbnb you're staying at in St. Louis for about a month and a half.
right, right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it just crazy. My wife, she grew up with this guy named Aaron, and he ended up moving there for college to St. Louis. Well, his parents had just bought an Airbnb there in St. Louis so that they could Airbnb it out, right? And they had just bought this thing. They had a few final things they need to do to it to get it so it could go on Airbnb. And so we had put it out there on Facebook that, hey, we're going to go to St. Louis. We know what this is going to look like. And Aaron's parents reached out to us and said, hey, we have this Airbnb. You can stay there for free. And then so they let us stay there for a month and a half for free. And they said, and here's a whole list of handyman stuff that needs to get done on the Airbnb. If you could do it, we'll pay you. So they not only let us live there for free, but they paid me to work on their Airbnb while we were in St. Louis. And it's just a crazy thing of how God works. And he always provides no matter what your circumstances are. And so like that kind of sums up 20, what are we on? 2019 is just like overwhelmed by the growth of the business because it needed it. And then it being able to survive with me being in a completely different other state for a month and a half.
Yeah. And I want to underscore to our listeners, Alan, you're such a positive, happy-go-lucky guy. And you're one of the most resilient people that I know and that I've been blessed to know in my life, because of specifically, there's many things I know about you that, is not related to business, but specifically your daughter's medical emergent surgeries and these things that are quite dire and severe and emotionally taxing and urgent, there's a lot of weight on it for her future, and your guys'
Mm-hmm.
future. That is that's some heavy, heavy stuff that you and Laura went through, and you handled it with such grace and love for your daughter and your business and your friends. And so I just want to highlight to our listeners that Alan won't say it, but he's really been through the fire in a really tough trials, and how resilient you are and how positive you are, man. It's something I really look up to. So I can't not highlight the extremity of we kind of, oh yeah, a month and a half in St. Louis, but that was for real. Like that was a hard
Yeah.
time. And then to be blessed with free lodging, paying for fixing, to be paid as a 1099 for other handymen in St. Louis, is amazing, man. And also, something I want to highlight about 2019 is it underscores, um, hiring amazing people, like not just someone to do a job. Like April, she took the job and grew into it and she made it better. She owned it. She was a leader of your customer service. That allows you to truly step away from the customer service, answering the phone, because you have confidence. You can sleep at night knowing, you know what? April's got it handled. If she misses a call, she's going to call him back. She's going to handle people like I would and probably better. And then
Mm-hmm.
Frank, I remember the Frank era. That guy was an amazing handyman. You
Yeah.
could
He could
rely
fix
on
anything.
him. You can
Yeah.
rely on him to go fix anything. So I want to underscore for our listeners that it wasn't just like hiring the first guy off the street. Like it takes time and it takes luck sometimes too, along with systems for vetting and hiring good people that are good people that can own their role and lead it, not just someone that clocks in and clocks out, because there's always going to be problems and missed expectations there, especially when the owner's gone for a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So these are kind of takeaways I wanted to highlight. And I love your summary, man, of in 2018, the previous year, with a month in the hospital in Sacramento, the business died without you. In
Yeah.
2019, the business survived without you. You were still on payroll and then hustling in St. Louis a bit. The business was still going. Reviews were coming in. Frank was going out there. April's answering the phone. It was an amazing year, in business, to get the base system set up from the E-Myth. So, moving on to 2020, I think everyone listening, when they hear 2020, they think COVID. At least I
Oh
do.
yeah. Oh
What
yeah.
a year. I'll never,
What a
everyone has
year.
their story. But what a year for handyman is a great thing for, the industry, frankly. But a lot of home improvements, busyness, people living, working in their home more, and finding all those little things that they want to fix or improve. And I mean, we saw all our clients, everyone we worked with, the Facebook groups. I mean, everyone had some amazing years during
Hmm.
that time. So all that to say, that's a zoomed out version. So zooming into Honestly here in 2020, total revenue about 225,000. That's 50% growth from the previous year where you doubled the year before that. Awesome stuff. The team remained, this is my favorite part about 2020. You didn't add labor. So,
Yeah.
theoretically, a lot of that 75K, a lot of that 50% growth went to the bottom line. Love that. So the team is still April, still Frank, and then Alan as the part-time tech and part-time estimator, kind of the owner. So Alan, take us into 2020, man. What did 2020 bring? Take us back.
Yeah, 2020 was absolutely insane because the whole world was freaking out. They didn't know what to do. There was all these talks of, California was shutting down like all businesses unless
Mm.
you were an essential business. So I'm like, are we an essential business? Like I've never dealt with this before. So I remember one day, like I literally called the health department in California and I'm like, hey, we have a handyman business. Like, can we stay open? And that might sound stupid that we called and asked that, but it's like we didn't know what to do, right? I'm still a very young guy. Like I don't want to get in trouble, right? And all this stuff. Trying to figure out what life looks like. And they had said, no, you're a handyman, you're an essential business, blah blah blah. So I'm like, okay, sweet. So we stayed open. But one interesting thing was people didn't really want us. They wanted us in their home as little as possible. Obviously, we had to be there to do the job, but they didn't want us to come in and do an in-person estimate, things like that. So one thing I started doing is like, okay, I'm gonna start doing virtual estimates. And I remember I drove to McDonald's parking lot, hooked into their Wi-Fi. I got this little laptop thing for my truck, and so I could put my laptop in there, hooked up to Wi-Fi, and I would just call people. I would get pictures from people. I would call them. I would do estimates. And what I quickly found, this is kind of was an evolution of the business, that I didn't actually need to go out in person on 100% of the jobs to sell the jobs. I actually found that I was selling more jobs virtually than I was like in person, and I was wasting less time. I was spending less gas, and it was just like mind blowing because this whole thought of virtual estimating was foreign to me because I always felt like, well, I am the business, and I know a lot of people listening are the same. Is that I'm the business. People hire me because of me and they want to see me. And if I don't go actually out there in person, they're not going to hire me because I don't get to put the charm on. I don't get to tap
Mm.
dance for them. But what I realized out of necessity, people didn't want me in their home, but they were buying more jobs, doing it virtually. And it was way easier on me, way less stress, gave me way more time to do the actual jobs. Um, and it just mind blowing because this whole thought of doing virtual estimates. So literally sitting in McDonald's parking lot using their Wi-Fi and selling jobs virtually from the truck was probably the highlight of 2020. And then also just business just exploded because homeowners, they weren't taking vacations, they were investing in their homes. I always put it as like I was talking to Kinesils because I used to work for Kinesils, so talking about, hey, how's the automotive industry going? And they said, oh, it just tanked during COVID because the way I see it is people usually drive to work. And when they drive, they see that check engine light on every single morning in their car. So they bring their car into the auto shop. Well, now they weren't driving to work because they're all working from home. Everyone was freaking out. But now they're sitting in their home office every day and they're staring at that drywall crack every single day, or they're staring at that light fixture that needs to get replaced, or they're listening to that dripping kitchen faucet every single day. And now they're like, I got to get this thing fixed because it's driving me nuts. So people were investing a lot more
Mm.
money in their homes during COVID, and just absolutely crazy. So kind of changed how people hired us and how we sold stuff, and it changed how I viewed sales forever, and it kind of launched us into that whole aspect of growth in the business, which is really exciting. And then also
Yeah.
another thing that happened in 2020 was I had the idea of like, well, hiring the CSR went so well the year before, let's hire another technician. So I put an ad out for a technician, had a guy, he was with us for like 2 weeks. uh, that went horrible, like just horrible. He was so rude to me, took advantage of me a lot of ways. Ended up just walking out. I've had a few guys walk out, just quit on the spot in the line of business. But it's been all a learning experience. But so that was 2020. We did try and hire one technician in 2020, but didn't work out.
Cool. Yeah, no, we'll talk a little bit more on hiring in 2021 when you did bring on a
Yeah.
few new folks. And I remember since 2021, you'd largely been kind of the business ran without you in the true sense of like you were taking you were on payroll and any profit at the
Yeah.
bottom line, and the business was running without Alan Lee, which is quite an accomplishment. So 2020, I love kind of the big takeaway is that people weren't hiring on Alan Lee. They were hiring Honestly Handyman Services to fix their problems, to solve their issues. And I think that's a really important realization as business owners grow, especially, when someone else is doing estimating and things like there's value to be had and it goes beyond yourself. And you start to see yourself more as kind of the shepherd and the lover of your people that are kind of executing the plan, right? While you're got the vision and kind of making sure everything's coordinated. So I love that realization selling from McDonald's. No one ever laid eyes on you, or maybe in the virtual estimate, that it detached you from the business in a way. And I personally believe that detaching yourself from a business can be very healthy.
Hmm.
You're on payroll. Your job is to kind of sell these jobs. It's people aren't just hiring Alan Lee. So I love that realization that you had in 2020. And also the the natural entrepreneurial spirit, man, of a successful business owner is you think on your feet and you're quick to act and solve problems. Like, okay, are we essential? I'm gonna call the health department. These people just like go on the internet and like try to, ask Facebook or complain about it.
Hmm.
Like, I love your proactivity. And we didn't even talk too of when you were starting your business and throughout your business career, you'd call up competitors and want to take them out to lunch and talk about business and pricing and all the different things if there's referral opportunities. So I just love your heart to just, you know what? I got a question and I'm going to call somebody about it because it's not something
Yeah.
that can be answered. Like, am I essential? So I love that, man. So moving into
Appreciate that.
2021, COVID didn't really, I don't know if you call it die down, but like towards the end of 2022, I believe was kind of the end of the COVID, at least home
Hmm.
service frenzy with, there's a lot of extra money in people's pockets from the government and all that jazz.
Hmm.
So 2021, still in the full heat of COVID here, as the full zoom out. Revenue in 2021, about 325,000. So that's 25% growth from the previous year. And I want to highlight Alan went from uh, doubled the business from 2019 to 2020, or 2018 2019. Then he grew 50% into 2020, and then 25%. So I love this steady growth, about 75K top line on your previous 2 years. So from 2019 to 2020, added 75K. Most of that went to the bottom line because you didn't bring on any additional labor. And then 2021, another 75K on the top. And I'm a huge advocate of practical business ownership, practical business growth.
Hmm.
Some people are made to be business titans and hyperscalers, right? To just double, triple, double, double, double. And that's for a certain select people, right? It's certainly not me. And I think that that's a really healthy growth rate that still allows you to take care of your family and yourself emotionally, take care of your team, and not be surrounded by chaos that comes with, hyper growth year after year after year. At the end of the day, you gotta, enjoy life, enjoy the time with the family. So that's just a personal observation I have. It's something I'm really big on in my business experience over the years is that there's always more to be had. There's always
Hmm.
opportunity. How much opportunity do you want to take this year? While still
Right.
enjoying your life and your family. So I just want to call out. I've always respected that about you, Alan. Since you're in the hot seat, man, I hope you don't mind all these compliments, but um, that practical business growth. It's amazing, dude. That's the dream. So
Thanks, man.
2021, 325K annual revenue. Marketing bumped up to about 1,300 a month. Still a little bit of Yelp dangling in there, and then more into Google Ads, pay per click. We had a lot of success with that. The team in 2021, of course, we still got April, still got Frank the tech. We've got an estimator. We've got the tech assistant. I always loved the tech assistant.
Yeah.
The especially him buying materials and bringing them to the job site the night before. Love that. And then Alan as the part-time tech. So we had some more medical stuff come up in 2021. So take us back, man. What was heading to 2021 like? Still in COVID. Obviously added a couple new employees to the team.
Hey, quick break here. If you are a handyman that feels stuck, this is for you. Most handyman simply stay stuck, working long hours, wearing too many hats, but it doesn't have to be that way. With the Handyman Journey Business Coaching, I will help you raise your rates, get better clients, and help you build systems so your business actually works for you. So don't waste another year figuring it out the hard way. Let's work together. You can book your free consultation with me, and you can also check out my coaching programs over at handymanjourney.com/coaching.
Handyman Marketing Pros is the #1 rated marketing company serving the handyman industry, and we're grateful to work with over 400 businesses nationwide. Whether you're an owner-operator looking to fill your calendar with more profitable work, or a growing business adding more trucks on the road, our expertise in websites, SEO, AI optimization, Google Ads, email marketing, and more can help take your business to the next level. Search for us online or visit handymanmarketingpros.com to see our programs, pricing, and you can also schedule a call to have a conversation, and we'll see if we're a good fit to work together. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, 2021 was an interesting year because I think somewhere around the beginning of the year, our daughter had a relapse with her feet. So basically club feet, born kind of, makes your feet kind of crooked. Well, they fixed them, right? But then they kind of started going back. And so we reached out to that same doctor that did the surgery in, what was that, 2019 in St. Louis. And he had since moved, and he moved to Florida to actually start up a clubfoot clinic in Florida.
Okay.
So we're like, okay, what needs to happen? So he's like, oh, you need to come out to Florida. You need to come out to Florida this time for a month and a half and live here while we do the same surgery, same casting, physical therapy, and all that for your daughter. So at the beginning of 2021, this probably was March, April, somewhere around there, 2021, we ended up going to West Palm Beach, Florida. Absolutely beautiful area, by the way. But we lived there for a month and a half. And another crazy thing that happened is we were, like, in order to make all of this work, we were about $500 shy to pay for the housing and all of that in Florida. And we didn't know what we were going to do for the last leg of the trip. And a few days before we left, we get a letter in the mail, and someone had sent us $500, a check for $5. And they said that they were just praying one day and they felt like they needed to send us this money. And it was, I get chills sharing this because it's just crazy, right? No one else could have known that except for God. So it's crazy the way that God just provides. And we were able to pay for everything we needed to pay for to get my daughter taken care of in Florida. But we lived there again for a month and a half. And while I was there, the business was still going by itself. We had the CSR, we had April, and we had technician. We had Frank as the technician. It was still going well. I was still, we were still communicating. So it was kind of the same kind of communication. I was still doing sales as we had in 2019. But I was realizing how overwhelmed Frank was, right? He had to go to the store. He had to leave his house at like 5:30 in the morning, go to Home Depot on his way to the job. When there was stuff that needed to be taken to the dump, he'd put it in the back of his U-Haul. And then I found out later he would take the U-Haul to his house, put the stuff on the side of his house, and then go to the dump on Saturday. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, that's insane to ask a W-2 employee to do. We don't work Saturdays. He was doing that off the clock. So That just speaks to what a great character that Frank has. He really just cared about the business and taking care
Yeah.
of people. But we were taking advantage of him. Like our business was I was taking advantage of him. So while I was in Florida, I came up with this idea of what would it look like to have a technician assistant. And this would be someone that picks up the materials, drops them off at the client's houses, picks up the stuff that needs to go to the dump, takes it to the dump, and then helps the technician, right? So it's another set of hands when you're mounting a TV or installing a toilet, whatever it is. And so while I was in Florida, I kind of set up some interviews, and I interviewed some people, and I actually had one guy come out to a working interview with Frank, and this guy showed up, and I never met him because I was in Florida. Apparently he had shorts and flip-flops on, and our technician's like, "No, you got to go. You can't work here with that." And so that was kind of the nature of how those went. I was trying to hire, not being there, that didn't work out. So I got back from Florida, and I had kind of crafted this job description, pay, what the pay structure would look like, all these scripts and documents and processes and systems for a tech assistant while I was in Florida, so that when I came back, I could start like looking for someone. And so we started kind of putting a few feelers out there, and we found this guy off ZipRecruiter. His name was Rich, and absolutely fantastic guy. We hired him as our first tech assistant. He was a little bit of an older guy. So when we first hired him, we're like, he might be a good estimator. We just had thought that, like when we brought him in for the in-person estimate, like he could definitely be a tech assistant, but he might be a better suited as an estimator. He's getting a little older. He's a little bit wiser, might be able to sell stuff a lot better. So we started him out as our tech assistant, and he was doing great. And then we had this other young guy come up, that actually, funny thing is, we were installing some lights at this church, and I was there with Frank. Me and Frank were there, and this young kid comes up, probably 18 at the time. His name is Micah, and he said, "Hey, Honestly Handyman." It's like, "I follow you on YouTube." He's like, "I go to this church, and I told them to hire you." And I'm like, "Really? Like, that's crazy." And so we were talking, and he was interested in the trades. And so I told him at that time, I'm like, "Hey man, if you ever are looking for a job, reach out to me." And he reached out to me a couple months later, and he came on as our tech assistant, and we moved Rich into the estimator position. And so that's how we ended 2021 with, CSR, estimator, tech assistant, then the estimator, like I said, was Rich. And then I was kind of part-time technician, also helping train Rich in the estimator thing. And the tech assistant, I want to talk a little bit more about the tech assistant role, because it's so pivotal to the growth. Because if, say, we're booked out for a week, well, we would sit down on Friday and we would order all the materials for next week. Like, we'd actually place an order at Home Depot, and then we would print out that order form and attach it to the work order. So every Monday that our tech assistant came in, he would grab all the work orders with the order forms, and he would pick up everything in one day. And then he would call the clients, and he would deliver the parts at the client's house every single day. If for whatever reason the client wasn't home or couldn't get dropped off or whatever, he would store it at the shop so that it's ready for our technician to go out, when they are. So it saved so much time for our technician. And if our technician replaced a toilet, he'd call our tech assistant and be like, "Hey, I got this toilet, I need you to come pick it up," or whatever. Such a pivotal role in growth, because it makes, again, tech assistant, they don't bring in any income, but it makes your technician so much more efficient. Like, imagine we had it where I loved working with a tech assistant. It was fun because you could imagine doing a drywall repair and finishing it and then just going on to the next job. So you finish this drywall repair, you leave the mess, you leave the drywall dust, you leave your tools on the ground, and then you go and you replace the kitchen faucet. While you're replacing that kitchen faucet, the tech assistant's cleaning up your mess. Like, that, let alone, is such a time saver. And it really makes people way more efficient. And so another scenario, imagine you're at a job site and you realize you got the wrong angle stop, and it's like, "Oh crap, we got the wrong angle stop." Well, instead of you stopping everything you're doing and going to the hardware store, you send your tech assistant to the hardware store and you go work on the ceiling fan at that same job. So you're doing that ceiling fan while he goes and he gets the angle stop. You come back, pop the angle stop in, and you're done. So it's like so much more efficient having a technician assistant. And that was probably the big key lesson of 2021 is a good technician assistant makes a technician drastically more efficient.
That's great, man. And one key point too is like you guys were always great at the honeydew list and encouraging and building up this true list of moving on to a few jobs in the house. And something I always loved and we recommend to everyone that, on our marketing and all this stuff is that you had in your brochure, you hand to everybody, you've got
Hmm.
that home maintenance check, like the 21-point
Right.
home maintenance check. And so naturally during estimates, you'd find these other things. And so I think that is important that supported the success of your tech assistant is that there were so many moving parts to every single home that you were doing where you weren't just coming in and, doing one thing a lot of times. It was multiple things. And so I think that's also reflected in your revenue growth relative to a modest, very low marketing budget increase year to year, if any. Because I actually flubbed the numbers from, 2020 to doing 225,000. 2021, you grew to 325. So it was quite a bit more than 25% growth, adding 100K in
Mm.
revenue. But a huge part of that is those repeat clients doing great estimating and upselling, finding other projects to do while you're on the scene, the tech assistant increasing the efficiency. So there's all these different pieces that start to work together as you move through the years that it's just fun to kind of, put our fingers on here. So I do commend the idea of the tech assistant, with my favorite one being supply dropped the
Yeah.
previous evening. So imagine the technician, like any listener out there, imagine showing up to your job tomorrow morning and the supplies are right there.
Yeah. It's magical.
Amazing. Yeah. One other highlight too that I want to commend is recognizing Frank of like you found out that he's doing dump runs on Saturday, and rather than just being like, cool, I guess that works, or just ignoring it, you confronted that as, hey, we're taking advantage of Frank. He's off the clock. We don't work weekends. I'm personally huge on that. Like if you're not
Hmm.
working, you're not, don't work weekends or whatever that time expectation is. So I commend your heart there. And I think that goes a long way at building goodwill with your employees that they act like they own the business. They have
Hmm.
ownership and accountability, but you treat them really well and really honest and fair. So that's a good little tidbit that I certainly took away that I hope our listeners do as well, being honest about how your employees are being treated, even if they are trying to go above and beyond and help. That's not fair, and it
Hmm.
should be acknowledged and
Yeah.
fixed.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, the key to all this that I've learned going back through this is you want to hire for things that are broken in your business. And when you find things that are broken, you don't want to just like brush them under the rug. You want to actually address them, right? Like meet them face to face. Like
Mhm.
the thing that was broken back in 2019 or 2018 is that like I wasn't calling people back and I needed to fix that. And then in
Mhm.
2021, the thing that was broken was we had a guy that was working probably 60, 70 hours a week, but was only getting paid 40 hours. Like that's a problem, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's more problems that come up in the next subsequent years that we'll talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that. Okay, so 2021 was the first year of like, I mean, the most of the year you were working on the business. And that's an
Yeah.
important thing that I hope our listeners realize is that you have to it's not an overnight thing, right? Oh, I'm working on the business now. Like it's a buildup. Like as you're the technician and you got someone answering the phone, and then you're a part-time technician, and you got a main technician. Like you need to work in this time to work on the business. And 2021, it seems like the first year where a majority of your time was spent on the business, not to mention everything on the side with your YouTube channel really growing, starting to do coaching, consulting, courses, to share your experience and educate people coming up that want to build something sustainable. So that's running on the side. And I know our
Hmm.
conversations are on Honestly Handyman, but something I commend you on writing. Alan is the author of multiple children's books. He's the only author that I know, a very niche, famous author within the club feet community.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful thing, man. What a life.
Thanks, man.
So
Thanks.
moving into 2022, um, revenue about 440,000. So growing over six figures, growing over 100,000 from the previous year. Marketing budget stayed the same, about 1,300 a month, with most of that going to Google. The team in 2022, it looks like a little bit more settled. As far as we got Micah in there, Rich, yourself, April was still in the squad. So what were kind of the main events, takeaways from 2022?
Yeah, so 2022, I have it labeled here as boundaries and leadership is kind of how I phrase that. And like I said, in business, you need to realize that there are problems. And when problems come up, you need to address them, and you need to take action. And sometimes addressing problems creates major disruption, right? But you still have to move forward with those. As a business owner, like no one's going to come save you. You have to figure it out. And so around the beginning of 2022, we had some issues with our technician Frank, some kind of personal issues and things like that, and so they kind of pouring into work and things like that. So we ended up having to make the really hard decision to fire Frank,
Mm,
because Frank, like we said, this guy could fix anything, and Frank's now a handyman in Sacramento, and he's still rocking and rolling, and he's doing great working for himself. He could fix anything. He had this U-Haul truck, this old U-Haul truck. I called it the Napa Auto Parts on wheels. Like he could literally fix anything, and really fantastic guy. But we made the choice that we needed to move on, and it was probably better for us to kind of separate and move on in different directions. So we made that decision one Monday morning, and I had to break it to the team, like, hey, Frank's no longer with us. And instantly everyone's like, what are we going to do? Because Frank is our main technician. So what are we going
yeah.
to do? So at that point, I told him, I said, well, I'm going to step in as main technician for the time being. So contrast this with 2021, like we just got done talking about, was predominantly me working on the business. Well, now with this big disruption, I'm now fledged full force into being the main technician of the business.
Mm,
So I'm main tech, Mike is my tech assistant, Rich is our estimator, and April's our CSR. It took a big leap because firing him meant that I need to step up in a big way. I need to step back into the business full time. And ultimately what I labeled it here was Frank and I, we had a codependent relationship, and I was very codependent, and I needed to set those boundaries. That was a problem within me that I needed to fix in myself, and I'm still working on that. It's kind of a lifelong issue.
well, can you
But
explain that a
that
little bit? Like what was the what was the dynamic there that was the problem for
yeah.
us?
So
I'm not good with the psychology and words
yeah. Yeah.
sometimes.
So codependency is basically finding your value or your worth in someone else or their
Mm,
opinion of you. And so I was so uh Frank and I, we had kind of a codependent relationship where we would kind of bounce off of each other looking for our value in each other. And it wasn't good because we weren't finding value in ourselves, we weren't finding value in God. I was looking to Frank as like, hey, Frank is the ultimate technician. He can do anything. So really just kind of like bow down, whatever he wants, he's going to get, right? And that wasn't a very good place to be because ultimately our morals and ethics didn't line up, right?
mm,
The whole thing culminated in a big disagreement in front of a client's house, and heated words were exchanged, and it just wasn't good. And so when you have a relationship that's founded on like trying to walk on eggshells around one or the other person, it's usually going to end in a blow up of some sort. And that's ultimately what happened with Frank and I. But I wish the guy the best, and he's doing great. He's got a lovely wife and kids, and don't wish any harm on him at all. So that's kind of sums up 2022 was really the boundaries and the leadership of like, hey, I realize I need to set a boundary here and
mm.
not be codependent. But that's going to mean that I need to step back full time into the business, which was really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of from the notes and reflections, you could tell 2022 it's like, we had big lessons learned in leadership and
Yeah.
hiring, firing, but back to work as the tech, kind
Hmm.
of the business as usual in the few years back. So I think it's a great lesson too of for people is like this is business, right? There's unexpected things. And sometimes people have amazing team members that are great at certain things but don't align with your company. And it's really one of the most difficult things to do is letting someone go that you really care about that is a great person but just not the right fit. I
Hmm.
think it's probably maybe the hardest thing that most business owners do. But it's necessary. A lot of times it's necessary. And one big takeaway that I would advise people is something I wish I did earlier is set core values for the company. And buy in your team into those core values.
Yeah.
Interview on your core values. So that way, when there are problems, people problems, production problems, whatever it may be, like for example, production, one of our core values is excellence. If there's an issue, it's like, hey, did this goes against one of our core values of excellence? If it was a known error, it wasn't fixed. It's like that's an issue, right? We need to address that, and it's disciplined or not discipline's the right word, but we've agreed that we live by these core values. And when we depart
Yeah.
from them, we need to have a conversation about that and get in line, or else, we have to have a hard conversation about parting ways. And so, a big takeaway I'd advise others is have core values for your company, even if it's just owner operator, mom and pop. Having those can set boundaries around the relationships with your team members, especially when it comes to the bad things, because it ultimately gets you back on that same page of why you're working together, what the mission is. And then conversely, on the positive side, you can commend and reward and encourage
Hmm.
based on living into those core values of like love, truth, transparency, whatever they might be for your company, of expressing these amazing core values of like truth is one of my favorite ones. And so for you,
Hmm.
sometimes the truth is really hard, and the truth sometimes is letting someone go, but you're kind of living by that core value by doing the truthful right thing to do. So anyway, a takeaway that I would recommend to our listeners, have core values. It helps guide your people problems and positives.
Yeah, and definitely, and I love that you pointed that out. There's a really good book that I happened to write a couple years ago. It's called The Handyman Freedom Formula. It's about mindset and company culture, and it's exactly about that. It basically is taking kind of the thought of the E-Myth Revisited, and you have the mindset in your business, but how do you translate that into company culture? And it all starts with core values. Like
Mm. Yeah.
that's where it all starts. So I would recommend uh, people listening to check that book out, Handyman Freedom Formula. It's volume one, mindset and company culture. But I think that's exactly where it all starts, Jason. So I love that you
Yeah.
pointed that out.
Yeah, you bet. And as you meet with employees, some people are like, well, what do I meet with my employee on in like a check-in? It's like, oh, talk about your core values, how they live into those. And if there's
Hmm.
problems, you can connect it with the core value. Anything you can systematize and get agreement on, it's just going to make the people and running the business easier. Um, so business is not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes you have to let
No.
go of your key person that is an amazing worker, but not the right culture fit, and then strap back on the tools and get in the truck. So
Hmm.
that's what you did. Awesome, man. So 2023, we grew from 440,000 to a little bit over 500. So 505 was the approximate revenue number for 2023. We transitioned all advertising to Google, so bumped up just $200 to 1,500 a month in Google. I believe 2023, getting older now, but I think that's when LSA, local service ads,
I think it
came
might have been
out,
yes.
and we
Yeah.
start to diversify that ad budget.
So
Um,
so I think we might have had 1,000 in PPC and then 500 in LSA,
yeah,
maybe. You know.
Yeah, and pay-per-click, PPC, a lot more advanced. Any of our listeners here, do not try to set up your own PPC. If you're doing DIY, definitely go with Google local service ads, especially in
Yeah.
2026 when we're recording this. So revenue bumped up, marketing about the same, transition to all Google. I think at this point too, your pricing had, gone up quite tremendously over the last few years. And Yelp leads not as higher quality as Google as far as their willingness to pay the minimum fee, which I think around 2023 is when you bumped it to, was it a 2 hour minimum around 250 or 300? or 1 hour at
Yeah.
180 or 190. I can't recall the specifics, but it would make sense to draw back from Yelp because a lot of people are going to be priced out of that. So anyway, I get caught up in the details here. It's 2023, about 500,000 annual revenue. The team, April, tried and true.
Yeah.
We got Alan in there. It's training and part-time in the field. We had a full-time estimator. I believe Rich was still in that seat. And had a couple technicians doing the work. So bring us into 2023, man. What was kind of the biggest events, learning that came from that year?
Yeah, so a lot of learning every single year. So the biggest thing with 2023 is obviously, we had gotten rid of Frank in 2022.
Hmm.
And then so 2023 kind of roll into that. I was full-time technician. Micah was my tech assistant. I trained him up, and I think he ended up leaving our company for a stint to deal with some family issues. And then he came back. But when he came back, he's like, I want to come back as a full-time technician, not the tech assistant anymore. So I'm like, of course. So we hired him. I think he was maybe 19 at this time. But this kid, I'm telling you, Micah's probably listening. He owns his own handyman business up in Auburn now. Dude,
Rock
that
star.
kid, yeah, he's got a big future ahead of him. Micah is absolutely fantastic. So good. But so we brought him on as a technician in 2023. And then shortly after that, we hired a tech assistant for him, Wesley, to help out with that. And then I remember somewhere around the middle of 2023, we had this other guy that had just emailed us randomly and said, hey, I'm moving to the area. I have background in handyman stuff, and I'm looking for a job. And I'm like, this is interesting. So I was talking to one of my mentors at church, and I'm like, hey, man, like, I don't know. I like the idea of bringing on 2 technicians, but I've never done it before. I've only ever had 1 technician. And it's kind of scary to bring on a second guy, right? Like, what if I don't have enough work for him, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And I remember my mentor, he told me, because he knew my background of the business. He's like, Alan, for the last few years, you've brought on a technician, you've lost the technician, you've had to step back in the field, you've lost the technician. It's this cycle. And he told me, he's like, if you have one, you have none. And so if you have just one guy that you're relying on, a single point of failure, you have nothing. And so he's like, you should bring on the second technician and then just keep rocking and rolling with that. So we ended up bringing this guy on. His name was Omar. I knew pretty right away that Omar was not a good fit. Omar, I think definitely one of those guys who talked a good talk in the interview, but didn't have what it took when it actually went out to do it. Come to find out, our tech assistant was actually doing more of the work when we would send Omar and Wesley out. Wesley ended up doing more of the work, even though Wesley didn't know, because Omar didn't know even more. So I knew
Oh,
that
God.
Omar was not a good fit, but I kind of just turned a blind eye at it, right? I didn't take my advice. I didn't address it straight on. I'm like, maybe he'll get better, blah, blah, blah. Well, one day he sent me a text and he said, hey, Alan, the truck is parked in the shop parking lot. My uniforms are in the back. I quit. And so he quit via text. Like, it was crazy.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, that was
Out of
the
the
end of
blue.
Omar. Yeah, out of the blue. But
How long was he working with Honestly Handyman?
probably a month, maybe a month and a half, you
So
know.
about a month and a half too long.
Yes, that was a month and a half too long, for sure. 100%. So that was the biggest thing I learned in 2023 was hire slow and fire fast.
Hmm.
Hire slow. Take your time. Don't just hire the first person that is breathing. Omar sent me an email out of the blue, and I'm like, he's breathing. He's moving to the area. Let's hire him. Yay, right? But no, that's not a good choice. You want to hire slow. You want to do a bunch of interviews. What we've done as we get more into this and as I learn more about hiring is have the first thing be a phone interview, and then do a in-person interview, and then do a Zoom interview with your wife. My wife was like the last line of defense because she could sniff out BS from a mile
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started running things. That's not how I ran it with Omar.
Shout out
Um,
to Laura.
yeah,
It's got a
yeah,
10 out of 10 BS radar.
I know Laura, man. She sniffed a little BS on me over the years too, but
Yeah,
uh,
I must have flew under her radar. I don't know how I did that.
I don't know how you got through. Yeah. it was close one there. Um, so Omar quit, and then Wesley ended up going to work for another company. So we didn't have a tech assistant, but then we were hiring, and I think Wesley left, and the next day we had another tech assistant start. His name was Harvey. But during the interview, we realized that Harvey was he worked for Sears for 20 years. This guy was a wizard at appliances, just a wizard. Um, so we're like, this guy's more than a tech assistant. He's kind of like a technician, but he's not a full technician. So we kind of invented this idea of what if we had different levels of technicians. We had an A tech, or let's start the opposite. C tech is someone who could do like dryer vent cleanings, kitchen faucets, things like that.
Tech
B
assistant.
tech, no. So you got the tech assistant,
Oh, okay.
and then
He's
you
just
got
the,
the
the
C tech.
assistant. Okay.
Right. Then you got a C tech because you got three levels of technician, right?
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
you got the tech assistant, then you got the C tech, which can do like dryer vent cleaning, kitchen faucets, things like that. And then a B tech could do like a little bit of drywall repair. And then an A tech could like rebuild a house if they need it. And the
Yeah.
pay structures are based off of those different levels of technicians. So what we did is we made Harvey a tech assistant slash C tech. So he was kind of both, right? So he could do some of the smaller jobs, but he was still tech assistant and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we rolled into 2024. If you look at, from 2023 as we get into 2024, we actually lost some revenue, and we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more because, again, I found more problems in the business that I had to address, which made it very uncomfortable, and I had to step back in. But that sums up 2023.
Awesome, man. Something I love about the A, B, and C techs, and I know this is there's some variations of this structure out there in the industry, but when there's like a job on the books and it's for, X, Y, and Z, and they can all be done by a C tech, it's like, oh, send the C tech out there. He's the lowest wage, he can do all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's like different levels, there's an A tech job in there, it's like, oh shoot, we definitely need the A tech. So there's also some efficiency in scheduling when you can granulate that when you start getting multiple technicians. So I do love that structure. Um, One of your notes too, one of the observations is the constant rebuilding. So that's what I love
Mm-hmm.
about your story, and the honest story of any entrepreneur is constant rebuilding. There's going to be failures, there's going to be successes, and all you can do is learn and work that trend up, right? We can't go month to
Yeah.
month, quarter to quarter, year to year sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it just underscores the importance of that positive mindset to make things better and to take care of your people, especially when it's just beyond yourself. So I just love that as a greater takeaway from your story, Alan, is
Yeah.
the endurance.
As
And in 2023 as well, is that when, let's see, you had your second child was born, so you had two kids because
Well, my
your
second child was
family?
actually born. My second child was actually born at the end of 2021. So yeah, we kind of skipped over that one, but
Yeah.
that was like after we got back from Florida, then we had my second kid. So we kind of skipped over that. But yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
there's all this family stuff behind the scenes as well, which
Hmm.
that's a real part of the family-owned business, though. Like
Yeah.
it's mostly glossed over. That's why I love our podcast, man. If I could talk about our podcast on our
Yeah.
podcast, is like it's just like real family-owned business kind of stuff that it's not talked about frequently, but it's the
Right.
realness of life and what we all go through. And so your endurance through it all, man, is awesome.
Thanks.
So 2024, we got revenue dipped a bit, not by much, man. We dropped about 25,000 from 500 to 475. Um, and the team was yourself and April, obviously, the two mainstays. We got Rich and the tech assistant, maybe estimator. I think 2024, we really went into estimator. And then we got Harvey on the squad. Marketing, I think, was relatively unchanged. And so going into 2024, man, the first kind of annual dip. I know as a business owner, even, through the years, you have dips and the business and revenue goes down, and it's a test of your resolve and also where your heart's at. Like, is my value in the numbers of my business, or is it somewhere deeper that's a little bit more that's more valuable, more sustaining in my family, my faith, whatever that looks like. So, It's just an important takeaway, in my opinion, of this kind of year. So lead us into 2024, man. What did that year look like for you?
Yeah, so 2024, it was a crazy year. My wife was pregnant with our third child, and she had a really difficult pregnancy. So she was sick every single
I
day
remember
up
that.
until probably 2 days after she gave birth to our third child, RD Jean, AJ. And so I took a lot of time off work. So she threw up every single day. She was kind of on bed rest. We had to get in and out to see the midwife. She had 5 or 6 IVs, put in, throughout that pregnancy just because she wasn't retaining any fluid and this and that. So basically, she was on bed rest. So I became full-time dad at the beginning of 2024, the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. So I was like, I can't be in the business. So it was kind of going with Rich, Micah, and Harvey and then obviously April. She's a constant. You can always expect
Yeah,
April to be there.
tried and
But
true, man.
those 4 people were kind of running it. I couldn't physically do it because I had to take care of my kids. Um, I saw at the beginning of the year sales numbers kind of declining, and Rich was the full-time estimator at the time. Things were declining. Uh, Things were not going as planned, but I couldn't get engaged because I had my family to take care of.
Mm.
Um, and then my daughter was born in May of 2024, super healthy, great baby. My wife was healthy. It was awesome. She was glad to not be throwing up anymore, and we were so glad to have our third baby with us. So, but sales were declining, and then we got hit with a huge tax bill. I think we owed like 20 grand on taxes, and then we got hit by our workers' comp decided that they misclassified us on workers' comp. So they hit us with, I think, about another 20 grand bill. So we had $40,000 that needed to be paid out, and our sales were declining. So it was
Mhm.
around June or so of 2024 where I had to I'm like, these bills are due in like a week, and I cannot continue to pay all of my people and do this. And sales are declining because things are just not getting sold. People aren't being booked out. So we had to make the horrible decision to lay off Rich, our estimator. He had been with us since I think 2021 is when we hired him. Great guy, such a huge heart. Just love him and everything that he brought to our company. But unfortunately, we had to make the decision to lay him off, and that was extremely hard because that also meant that I was going to step in as full-time estimator now. So I went from the beginning of the year being full-time dad, not being involved in the business at all. Well, now I'm full-time estimator. I need to be in the office every single day selling jobs on the phone. And again, the majority of our jobs we're doing virtually. We rarely went out. When we did, we charge a consultation fee, things like that. But that's all other sales stuff to get into. So had to make that hard step. So the key emotional point I put here is I knew that there was a problem, but family came first, right?
Mm.
Like the beginning of 2024, I knew that there was a problem, but I couldn't address it, and I also kind of brushed it under the rug. I'm like, I don't want to think about
Yeah.
that. And and it came to kind of a head where it's like, oh crap, I got these bills that are due. I need to book out our technicians. They're not being booked out right now. I got to make some tough decisions. And that was around the middle of the year, 2024, where I had to jump in. And, the key lesson I wrote down here is sometimes life forces your priorities into focus of like what actually matters in life. And that kind of sums up 2024. And then, we took it throughout. And then somewhere near the end of 2024, I hired another technician because Micah had left, so we had just Harvey as the technician. So it was really just me, Harvey, and April. Um, I brought in another technician, Brian, and then another technician. Another tech assistant at the end of the year, and they were until the beginning of 2025. But 2024 was very much like a kind of a brush under the rug because I had to, but then also face some big things and then step into it back again full time. So it was a roller coaster of 2024.
Yeah, I remember that time, man, when you stepped back in after you let Rich go. because you started selling and you're like, this is what you realize that there was a big problem in
Right.
performance.
Yeah.
And which is it's interesting the contrast there. Like the people of the business, it's one of the hardest things about business ownership and being a leader because there's people problems and you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. It's natural to, want to avoid that. But with Frank, he was an amazing worker, got results, but the core values weren't there.
Hmm.
Rich, core values were there, amazing man, but like I remember you uncovering a lot of things that you knew deep down there's probably not
Yeah.
there's a lack of follow-up, there's a lack of like enthusiasm, there's just a lack across the board of initiative and
Hmm.
proactivity in getting those numbers to where the goals are. Um, and that's a hard decision either way, no matter what, core values, performance, like it's easy to kind of brush that off, but especially so with performance and sales declining and bills to be paid, that is a super important role. Um, and it takes a lot of heart and courage to pull that trigger, whether it's a technician or an estimator or sales role. Um, People need to, kind of hit their numbers and meet the goals within reason or have action plans to improve. And unfortunately, it just came to you having to step in and do it. But I remember you getting in. I remember you telling me there's this relief almost of like, man, I don't know what was wrong. Like this is easy. Like I'm selling jobs left and right. It's great. Like I remember you having a great time getting back
Yeah.
into it after the dad mode for 5, 6 months, taking
Yeah.
care of Laura. So that's something I remember vividly of you getting back in the sales seat and being like, okay, we're back. Like it wasn't really, it was a problem with the job that was being done there. And that doesn't make it any easier, but it's the
Hmm.
realness of people in the business, right? Um, and I love your kind of point too of you knew there was a problem, but your priorities were elsewhere. If you could go back, man, would you have kind of solved that earlier, or do you think like the timing and everything was just kind of always going to be the way it was, taking care of Laura and the kids and knowing like the sales were falling through and there were some problems? Because that's hard to balance.
Yeah, that's a good question. And if I had to go back, I wouldn't have done it differently.
Mm,
It's just the way that the cards laid when they did, but
mm,
I always am going to choose my family over business, and that's not always the most productive or profitable way to think about it. But for me, if you're choosing the business over your family, like the priorities are wrong, right? Because like when you're on your deathbed, your kids aren't going to say to you like, "Man, Daddy, I wish you worked a couple more hours." Like, I wish you worked. No, they're going to say, "Daddy, I wish you were around more." Right? Or like, "Man, I'm so glad we took that trip to the Grand Canyon," or "I'm so
mm.
glad we, got to spend every summer, making orange juice at Grandpa's house." Like, those are the things that really matter. And business, we're all here for business. We're all here to grow our business, but what really matters in this life is not business.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take your business with you. The only thing that matters in life is where you go when you die and who you bring with you, i.e., your family, your friends, people that you tell about ultimately Jesus. That's where we're going to go when we die. If we know Jesus and accept him as our personal Lord and Savior, we can be assured that we're going to heaven. Outside of that, nothing else matters. Now, obviously, there's fun stuff that we get to do in this world, and business is part of it. For me, business is like it's a mission. It's a way to enact change in this world. Where when we see problems, which we all see problems in this world, business is a pathway to start rebuilding those problems. And for us, it starts one kitchen faucet at a time.
I love that, man. Yeah, and it makes it harder to when like extreme family circumstances, like Laura being incredibly sick for 9 months and 2 days.
Mhm.
And the kind of medical trips that you've had to take with Harper, it kind of really forces your hand in a more extreme way than most, I would say. So I really commend your heart in that, man. I had the special opportunity to spend a lot of time with a family member of mine who her spouse passed away of 65 years.
Hmm.
And I was with her for a good amount of time right after it happened. And the only thing she talked about was the memories and the experiences they had together, whether it was in their home or traveling or with friends and family. It was never about their work together or the little problems or the things that we worry about in our mind and our heart. And it was a great firsthand experience of what you just shared, man, of like at the end of the day, like that time that you have with your family, that precious time that you were able to help your wife when she was super sick and take care of Harper and Henry, man, that's powerful stuff. Great perspective too. And sometimes our perspective it gets checked when we're in a hard spot that forces us to make that realization of, you know what? I need to be there for my wife and my kids. I know that sales are kind of down, but I'm going to do what I can to support Rich because I can't hire somebody else. I don't have the space to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
life is hard. Business is hard. And
Yeah.
perseverance is a necessary trait to be in business for 10 years. You know, man, it's been 10 years since
Yeah.
you started your entrepreneurial journey. I'm coming up on 10 years, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes resilience because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there's certainly plenty of sunshine and rainbows. Um,
Yeah.
so great thoughts on 2024, resiliency, sales being down, family, getting back in the driver's seat for sales. So moving into 2025, our last full year before Honestly sold in early 2026. Um, Business grew from 475 to 615. So cracking that 600,000 annual revenue, that's a feat, man. Total Google reviews we have noted here of close to 400, which I think it's fun
Yeah.
to look at that over the years, you know, all these
Totally.
reviews from people that you've served and helped. Your business is systematized, it's sellable. Um, let's see, the team is still intact here. Well, was April still there? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh
April,
yeah. April's
obviously.
a constant.
Alan, I know you got a lot more in place systematically for a general manager position, a couple technicians. So take us into 2025, man, as the business as a system fully packaged up. Take us back.
Yeah, so in 2024, when I had to step back in, I was like in the office, all the time, right? So I'm like, okay, while I'm in here, I'm going to work on actually dialing in these systems, right? I had no thought of selling the business. But I'm like, I need to package this up a little bit nicer, right? So that it's actually more sustainable. So when we do, the thought was when we do bring on an estimator, when we do bring on a general manager, when we do bring on whatever, we have a binder. Like literally what I did is I created binders for each position that had their scripts, their SOPs, their processes, work we do, work we don't do, what areas we work in, commonly asked questions, how do you combat objections, what is our referral list, like who's on our referral list. So like just creating all these documents to have in a binder. That's really was my focus on in late 2024, early 2025. And about May of 2025, we brought on this awesome technician, Cody. He was part of a workout group that I'm part of, and he came in. Him and Harvey just rock and roll. This guy was awesome. And then we also brought on an estimator slash general manager, John, who was absolutely fantastic, just such a great guy. And we found him through ZipRecruiter. So we put out an ad for ZipRecruiter. That was probably our longest hire process. We went through, a phone interview, and then an in-person interview, and then a Zoom interview with my wife, and then another Zoom interview before we actually hired him. And that was just really cool. We took our time, we made sure he was the right guy, and it was fantastic. And so he stepped in as the estimator general manager. So at this point in 2025, we had April, we had John, which was estimator general manager. We had Harvey, we had Cody. And then we also had another tech assistant that ended up leaving mid 2025-ish. And then it was around that time, around the beginning-ish of 2025, when I really felt God kind of highlighting a problem in my own heart, and that was pride and ego. And he showed me that I had a lot of pride in my business, right? Because I told God that, like, you could take anything from me, just don't take my business. It's what I built, right? And I had this saying that to God. That's crazy. So he really softened my heart. And what I feel like he told me, and if we go back to 2017, I started up a YouTube channel, and I had no idea what that was going to be. what that is now all of this stuff has come from that, which is crazy. And there's been handymen that have been following me over the years, and I've been coaching them. I run a coaching and consulting business called the Handyman Journey. And I have helped these people out. And I feel like at the beginning of 2025, God told me, I want you to stop focusing on what you feel like you have built, and I want you to start focusing on what I have built. And what I feel like he meant by that was, it wasn't my intention to build all these handymen and start this coaching program. Like, that was totally God built that in the background. My focus was Honestly Handyman. And so I'm like, wow, that's like, so I went back and forth for months, like wrestling with God about this, and like finally culminated about the middle of 2025 of like, hey, let's sell this business, right? I feel like God's telling me to sell this business, and I'm finally okay with that. And I still, even after I made the decision, I still wavered quite a bit in my heart about it, just because I had so much pride about Honestly Handyman. I'm like, but I am Honestly Handyman. That's who I am. And so if you take that away from me, what am I? And I'm a child of God, right? So sorry, we're getting all preachy on this podcast episode. Don't mean to, but that's how it rolls. So take it or leave it. So around that time, we reached out to a broker. We got an evaluation, and we listed it. We listed it in June of 2025 on bizbuysell.com, and it was a crazy year because we had a lot of growth. So that team that had come into place in 2025 was just rock stars. We were just banging work out. And it's so crazy to think about this because we had a bad year in 2024, right? 2024, we didn't grow in revenue. We actually declined. So if you look at 2024 to 2025, it's like, that's just 1 year difference. But what changed was really all the systems and the processes that I had dialed in, all those binders, me actually being able to focus on the business. And it's having the employees in place so that every employee you hire gives you more time, freedom, energy, mind power to focus on creating the systems. And that's really, I think, what made the big difference in 2025, and having something that was sellable was like, hey, we have all this in order. I don't know how deep you want to get into the whole sales process right now, because I know we're making the next episode of this is going to be all about that. But
Yeah.
that kind
We'll go into
yeah,
all the details of the actual business sale, like, the whole timeline and everything. So, like on that episode, let's focus on what else in Honestly Handyman. So, I mean, on your heart, a big thing last year was you felt this calling, the time was there, because you do the coaching. I know there's so much fulfillment in coaching and mentoring and seeing success of others, and we all have passions, and we need to listen to those passions in our heart. I think that there's bigger things that get revealed through those, and for you it was these group of amazing handy people that are coming through the handyman journey, and even just the Facebook group and YouTube channel. And so it was time. So that's a big part of your honestly experience last year. And it's also kind of crazy too, because 2025, like the dream team is there. You almost kind of figured it out of like,
yeah,
wow, we can be pretty stable. We've got our core team, because employee churn is expensive, and it's
yeah,
emotionally expensive as well. And so, I personally feel blessed with an amazing team, and know the benefits of that, and to walk away or to feel like this, it's all there and it's ready to run without me. You just felt that deep calling. What else was there to uncover as far as honestly goes, or was most of your last year, like since the middle of the year, was it just around like, I'm ready?
yeah. It was kind of just that realization that, you know, I've been the roadblock in some sense, you could say, for Honestly Handyman, right? I've gotten it to where it's gone, which is great. I mean, we had our last year was 615,000. That's amazing. That's crazy, right? And it offered us so much freedom and
Hmm.
lifestyle. But I feel like God was telling me, like, it's time for the next guy to take it to the next
Hmm.
level. And just a little snapshot of like when we found the new buyer, I'm like, dude, I've had a vision for the first 10 years. This guy's got a vision for the next 10, 20, 30
Yeah.
years. Like, it's a gift. It's a gift, man. And it's like, so the biggest thing for 2025 was like just realizing that like the business started growing when I stopped trying to be the business, and the business wasn't just me, and
Mm.
eventually I realized that I needed to let it go, and it was time to you know let the dove out of the cage, right? The kids
Mm.
graduating, going to college, and going from there. So yeah, that's kind of what 2025 was.
Awesome. So, also a teaser, guys. We're going to be interviewing Eric, the new owner of Honestly Handyman, on the
Yeah.
podcast. We've got that already scheduled, lined up. So that'll be coming out, I think, in August 1st, I believe, is our slated date for releasing our interview with Eric. Super excited to talk with Eric, and of course, we work with him at Handyman Marketing Pros. Amazing guy. Definitely, he's got that vision for the future
Yeah.
of this amazing brand. And so I'm really excited for us to interview the new owner, which that's
Yeah.
probably going to be quite an experience. I mean, certainly it is for me, and I can't imagine for you, man. So that's an episode that we got cooking, of course, digging deeper into Alan's the whole process of selling. And I've got a few more questions for Alan, but hopefully thus far, guys, if you're still with us, I mean, it's a long episode. Um, and to understand the full journey, the handyman journey that Alan has paved and now is helping others pave their own journey. There's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, joy, smiles, success in all that. And I hope that this story so far really underscores like, wow, it's a lot that goes into Alan's
Yeah.
business and his journey. And I hope it certainly for me it helps gives me empathy for other handyman business owners or any business owner out there, regardless of good, bad, somewhere in the middle. Like, they're on a business journey and they've probably had some hard turns in the road and some great turns as well. It's an amazing, just raw, honest story, man. And to exceed 600,000 in revenue, not to mention a huge highlight that I can't not mention for everyone listening. Alan, for years, like you could have been the general manager and the estimator for without hiring and take an
Hmm.
extra salary and profit. But your mission has always been on how does this run completely without me? And that's a unique
Right.
thing. And so when I look through all these numbers, there's probably listeners out there is like, oh, I'd never want to sell my business. It's like, man, look at the opportunity. If your heart is fully in that running the business. So I commend you on that, man. You've always had this focus on how does this work without Alan Lee? And now you've witnessed it and have sold it. So
Thanks, man.
hearing that,
Appreciate that.
yeah. So a couple questions, some final thoughts here as we wrap up. I don't like the word regret, but like, what? I'm gonna put you on the spot, man. The single hardest experience from your handyman and honestly handyman. What is the single most difficult thing that you had to overcome?
I would say for me, firing employees, uh, extremely, extremely hard.
Mm.
Looking someone in the eye, and we didn't even get to all, like, in the midst of all these years, we had employees here or there that didn't work out. Some employees that we had for a week, some employees that we had for a month, that either just, you know, they just jetted
Yeah.
one day, or I had to fire them, or they went off to the desert. Crazy story. That's for another time. But like
CIA
that's
operative.
yeah, that's the hardest thing is just firing people. Looking someone in the
Mm.
eye, knowing that your paycheck is paying for their bills, and then you have to take that away from them.
Mm.
Like, I don't think there's anything harder than that. It's just extremely hard. But that's the price that is required in this thing. So yeah, that's probably by and large the hardest
Yeah.
thing that I've ever had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with my experience, and I certainly there's every business owner out there that's had employees knows there's all these blips in the radar you kind of forget. My favorite
Hmm.
one for us, there was a guy and he had a quarter life crisis. He said he was 25 and had a quarter life crisis and was going through a lot, and
Yeah.
so I call him quarter life crisis Chad. So anyway, he was a blip, and you kind of forget
Yeah.
about the blips, right? But it's kind of normal. But the big ones hurt,
Yeah.
man. The ones that you you love like your family. You know, the best business leaders, I think they really care for their employees like family, and having to
Yeah.
let someone go for performance, culture, core values is absolutely just gut-wrenching.
And then another thing is don't hire people. Well, I never had luck. Don't hire friends, don't hire family,
Yep,
don't
I
hire
agree with that.
people that you know from church like that you're close with, because it never ends up well. And then when you have to fire them or they leave, um, it muddies the water. So
Yeah.
I
Uh
did that a few times.
yeah, I agree. I can't help but shout out Robert Daly with Daily Woodworks, going back
Yeah.
into the history books here.
Yeah.
Um, he said famously that you charge your friends and family double and congregation members triple.
There
And
you go.
that quote always stuck with me as being
Yeah,
hilarious, but also there's some wisdom in there. Um,
totally.
so so on the flip side, man, what is kind of the biggest win, like the most gratifying, like experience moment? I know it can be hard to encapsulate, but what sticks out is like, man, like that was just the dream. That was just an amazing experience that ranks among the top, if not the top.
I think probably the biggest experience is, we first, there was this lady that moved here from the Bay Area and she hired us. And we came in and she told me afterwards, her kids were there. She was homeschooling her kids while we were there working. And after we went outside, she pulled me aside and she said, like my kids said that they felt safe with you, and
Hmm.
I just want to thank you for that because we've had people in the house before that they just haven't felt safe with. And that was probably the biggest compliment I've ever had. And then that lady, her mom and dad already lived in the area. So she referred us to them. They referred us to their other brother and they referred us to their other sister. So we worked for the whole, shout out to the Griego family. Like, just they they probably brought us through a lot of years in this business. They supported us very well. Every time Debbie had a piece of furniture that she was getting rid of that was a kid piece of furniture, she would always offer it to us because she had grandkids, and when they outgrew it, she'd offer it to us for our kids to play with. And so we have a lot of Debbie Grego's furniture in our house, and just being able to make an impact in
Hmm.
people's lives. It's not so much the kitchen faucets. Like that was kind of a front for what we did. We were literally changing the world. Like we partnered with various different nonprofits to help rebuild homes damaged by wildfires, help free kids from just slavery, and we've done all this stuff in the world, and we've been able to have our clients join us in those fights, and it's just that's probably been the
Hmm.
biggest thing,
Yeah.
is having the mission of the business be bigger than us, you
Yeah.
know.
One of my favorite wisdoms I got from a coach of mine, shout out to Steve C. He said that your business is a ministry and your testimony is right now. And I think that regardless of someone's faith or what they want to accomplish in their business or make money, um, that ultimate ministry of like loving your customers and loving your team, that's going to produce success and goodness and some amazing results that you don't expect. So to get out there and love someone through faucets. I love how you use faucets as the
Yeah.
example. It's kind of the guise of, hey, I want to show you how much I care about you and to do a great job and whatever, faucets, websites, it's all good. And one takeaway, man, when I was asking you that question of like, the hardest thing and the best thing, what comes to my brain is the best things are like unlimited. There's so much more upside and positives, even in the midst of trials. Like the business journey that you go on, the handyman journey, that first, like I'm driving to Home Depot at 10 a.m. It's my second
Yeah.
day, like it's downpouring. I got to figure things out. Like how much, like that's amazing. What an
Hmm.
experience.
Yep.
Getting compliments from clients, having amazing years, being able to sell. I think that the takeaway is the journey is worthwhile if you
Yeah.
have the heart and the determination to keep walking.
100%. And looking at this and all of our notes, this was actually a pretty big project to like sit down and come up with all these 10 years, right? Because it's just so many memories. Looking at it, it's not hugely like in my mind, it's not like amazing. It's not something that's like, oh wow, you did this and this just rocked it. it was really just me not giving up was
Mm.
the biggest factor in this whole thing. The reason why we made it 10 years, because I just didn't give up. I'm too dang stubborn, right? There's probably times when we should have closed the business,
Mm.
but we didn't, right? Um, and so I think that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest lesson as an entrepreneur is like, if you really want to do this thing, just don't give up and figure out ways to keep plowing forward and see the problems and address the problems and put things in place to fix the problems. And that's how you do it, you know?
Mm. Yeah, that's great, man. I had that same kind of thought, especially with marketing, is like you zoom it all out and it's like, it's not all rocket science. The
Yeah.
solutions are quite simple. You have problems and you just solve them. And from hiring to marketing to, running the operations, like you've put the framework in and the formula and just worked it and didn't give up. Um, and so it zoomed out through the whole story. It does seem quite simple,
Hmm.
but it does require a lot of perseverance.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Alan. So we're going to wrap up shortly here. I've got some more questions we're going to dig into after we talk about the business sale for that next episode, because I do want to get a bigger decompress. I think everyone, after 2 hours here, like, all right, let's take a breather for the next episode. So the next time, of course, we're going to dig deep into the business sale. And also want to cover some bigger reflections as we kind of wrap up our honestly conversation, which we'll never truly wrap up because it'll always be part
Mhm.
of our episodes and conversations, man. It's a big part of your story, certainly, and ours together. So in closing, how can people connect with you now? What the heck are you even doing now, Alan? Get a job, brother.
I know, I know. So yeah, now I'm doing handyman business coaching full time. And I think one thing that's super easy for people to connect with me on is I've kind of summarized this podcast right here. So I've created an ebook that I want to give to you for free. And it's basically the 10 biggest lessons that I've learned over the last 10 years of starting, growing, running, and selling my handyman business. You can check that out on handymanjourney.com. Fill out your information there. I'll send you the ebook. And then I also have just started up something called the Handyman Journey Weekly. So basically, I send out a weekly newsletter with business tips. It's all designed to help you really avoid some of the problems that I've encountered over the last 10 years. So that would be the way you guys can find me. Is download that ebook at handymanjourney.com. Another way is you can just send up a smoke signal or a carrier pigeon, and I'll find you in some way. No, I'm just kidding. Email me, go to my website, email me at alan@handymanjourney.com. I love chatting with people. So if you go to the website, you can actually set up a free 15-minute call with me. We could talk about whatever the heck you want. I love talking with handymen. So that would be one way that you guys could get a hold of me. I would absolutely love to hear your guys' story that are listening to this.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely hard to find you in the RV, today and Ripon tomorrow, who knows? What an amazing journey, man. I'm
Yeah,
proud to
that's
know
that's
you.
actually a good point. I actually didn't highlight that, but I am now doing something called the Handyman Roadshow. So we are in an RV traveling. I'm literally in the RV right now. We're down near Modesto, California. We're traveling all over the United States, meeting with handymen. So it might be you one day. We recently took a trip up north, up the coast, and we met with a few different handymen. And we have a podcast called the Handyman Roadshow where we interview these handymen live, in their area. So it's outside, it's working on jobs with them, driving in trucks. I think one time we were filling up a guy's truck with gas, and we were just talking there at the gas pump. So check that out. You can check that out on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you listen to stuff. However that works. But yeah, that's what I'm doing, and just enjoying my family. That's probably the biggest thing, you know.
You've earned it, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all the reflections. Thank you for, I know I gave you a lot of homework in preparation for,
Yeah.
our interview today, man. I just, I'll reiterate to our audience that your story is powerful because it's real and it also shows how tangible and possible it is to grow a handyman business that can ultimately run without you if you would like it to be. It's totally doable. Is it easy? Probably not. There's lots of trials and real life things that happen. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to really go down memory lane with me and prepare kind of go through the story, because anyone listening, like Alan's story can be yours, and probably better, maybe not
Hmm.
as good, but definitely realistic to have a better life, live a dream that, you didn't think was possible, to be self-employed, run a business, owner operator, or, growing with employees. It's all doable. So Alan, thank you for your truth, your transparency, your heart, your perseverance. That we only scratch the surface too, guys, of like Alan's heart and perseverance through life. It's really something that I look up to, and you don't see it on the public, and you just don't see it out front and center. But there's so much stuff we all go through in life, and so Alan, I appreciate your heart, your truth, your transparency on the episode. Next, guys, like we mentioned, I'm going to be interviewing Alan again. Hope you aren't tired of Alan. I know you're not tired. Uh, and we're going to be talking in detail about the sale of a handyman business. So, whether you're just intrigued, whether you would like to sell a handyman business, there's going to be tons of actionable takeaways, how he listed it, the whole process, the interviews, things falling through, things going well, um, all the negotiations, all the details, and also a higher level decompress of the entire Honestly Handyman story, from after the sale. And of course, we are going to be interviewing Eric, the new owner of Honestly Handyman Services. Amazing guy, amazing leader, that's bringing great energy into the business. And so that's going to be a unique experience. We get to, put on our glasses and look into this new lens of what Honestly is doing, and the vision of the new owner. So super stoked for that.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Jason, for having me on. This was just such a pleasure, and I just want to encourage people that are maybe just starting out. Don't give up, but also don't let this business consume you. Make sure that you are taking care of your family first, and yourself, because no one else is going to take care of your family or yourself. That's all you. But you can do this. Keep on the right path, and you don't have to do it alone.
Mhm.
So join the Handyman Journey Mastermind group on Facebook if you haven't yet. Absolutely fantastic. But thank you so much, Jason, for having me. This was a blast.
My pleasure, brother. See you on the next episode. Thank y'all for tuning in.
All right, friends, that's a wrap of today's episode of the Handyman Success Podcast. And I want to thank you so much for being here, but I want to encourage you, don't let the growth stop right here. I want to encourage you to dive deeper into our handyman ecosphere. We host free live webinars and live videos every single month, and these are jam-packed with strategies that can help you grow and excel to the next level in your business. And join us on our private Facebook page, where there's thousands of other handyman just like you that have similar struggles that are talking about how to grow and how to be a better person and have a better business. So for resources, training, and all of that, all in the same place, check us out at handymansuccess.net. You can get links to all of that information down in the comment section below. And that's it for today. Until next time, keep being an awesome person and keep pushing yourself